Beautiful choir. Thank you. I'm reading from Psalm 91. This is one of God's wonderful promises to his people. You who live in the shelter of the Most High, who abide in the shadow of the Almighty, will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. For he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions. Under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a buckler. You will not fear the terror by night, or the arrow that flies by day, or the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, or the destruction that wastes at noonday. Those who love me, I will deliver. I will protect those who know my name. When they call to me, I will answer them. I will be with them in trouble. I will rescue them and honor them. With long life, I will satisfy them and show them my salvation. May God bless our sharing of his word. And may we know the true security which may be found in God's blessed shelter.
We're reading from the 91st Psalm, but there is a prayer which the psalmist offers earlier in Psalm 55, which stretches us right up to Psalm 91 and its resonant answer. You'll want to place yourself firmly in the context of our world today, reflecting on the events that you hear about in the news, the international and even local implications of this news. And recall that these words that have dwelt deeply in your heart, we need to hear this from Psalm 55. Give ear to my prayer, O God. Do not hide yourself from my supplication. Attend to me and answer me. I'm troubled in my complaint. I am distraught by the noise of the enemy, because the clamor of the wicked. For they bring trouble upon me, and in anger they cherish enmity against me. My heart is in anguish within me. The terrors of death have fallen upon me. Fear and trembling come upon me, and horror overwhelms me. And I say, oh, that I had wings like a dove. I would fly away and be at rest. Truly, I would flee far away. I would lodge in the wilderness. I would hurry to find a shelter for myself from the raging wind and tempest. Can you hear the cry of David wailing to the Lord about the noise of the enemy? What might that be for us? Could it be threats of catastrophic destruction or cries of death to the people? What about the clamor of the wicked and the trouble they bring? Your list might not be what my list would be. Hovering over us these days are issues represented by platforms of political parties, but to me the real issue is friendship. In the debate over politics, we have forgotten friendship. Legislators need to be able to call one another friends at a level which is meaningful and which leads to cooperation. Personal friendships which have the full force of love and mutual respect must replace suspicion and mistrust. We must learn again how to walk the path together, to lean on each other in times of trouble, to recognize the best in each other, and to listen less for trigger words, and to simply be in tune with the heart and soul of the one we're with. The world has always swirled around us in chaos. There was chaos in the beginning before creation. In some of your lifetimes, there has been World War II and the Great Depression, great and small financial worries, relationships, terrorism, disease, schemes and scams, crime and substance abuse, violence, weather, health. Lest we think these things are new, when I was 19 and spent a week in London, England with a group of college students, we went to Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, and the next day it bombed by the Irish Republican Army. Before we headed to the airport, we looked at the front page of the newspaper, and there was a picture of a barrel of a tank representing the hundreds of soldiers and military equipment and personnel that had surrounded Heathrow Airport, and the terminals were filled with machine gun carrying soldiers. This was 1971, because there was fear that an Arab terrorist had gotten possession of a Stinger missile, and they were going to shoot down either an Israeli plane or a Pan American plane, and we were flying Pan Am. These things are not new. The psalmist moves ahead in 91 and calls these things the snare of the fowler. The snare of the fowler. One who would trap us in our own contradictions and lure us into decisions which lead to pain and confine us to one poor definition of self. Some of these things may be the snare of the fowler. Now, of course, the fowler is the one who traps birds. We're not criticizing anyone who makes a living by capturing birds for food or even for sport, but the psalmist realizes that life sets many traps for us. There's the trap and illusion of success, when accumulation of wealth supersedes friendship, when accomplishment and accolades are sought over just breaking bread together, when image and appearance hijack the need to make that phone call or to sit down and sip some coffee together, to talk about whatever's on our minds. We've fallen into the snare of the fowler and are trapped in a life of misery that is largely of our own making. The snare of the fowler can be many things which destroy relationships and undermine friendships. The writer tells us that we are the ones who live in the shelter of the Most High, who abide in the shadow of the Almighty. He's speaking to Israel, the chosen people of God who have forgotten, whose collective memory that they are chosen and beloved has been blown away with the winds of cynicism and exile and eroded with the water of fear. He speaks to those who have at one time or another claimed boldly of the Lord, my refuge and fortress, my God in whom I trust. And the good news is that God does not address us as those who have not inherited that which the Creator wants us to have. He addresses us as those who need to be reminded that it is the good pleasure of God to endow us with holy love and spiritual friendship and a life of grace and peace. God wants the best for us. We forget to remember this legacy of our mighty and holy eternal mentor. It says he will deliver us from the deadly pestilence, which could be disease. It could be whatever fragments our lives, drives us apart from one another on a local or global scale. Pestilence could be whatever devastates us. I don't think it's just AIDS or the bubonic plague or drug-resistant bacteria or addictions which rend and destroy the tightly woven fabric of families. And then the psalmist says something that sounds unusual. He will cover you with his pinions. Is that a word you use at least once a week, right? I don't think so. He will cover you with his pinions. When the storms come, the eagle and the hawk and the cardinal and the chickadee all spread their wings and fold the wings over their chicks to cover their young. Those who cannot protect themselves will be protected by one who is bigger than them, who knows better than them, who senses the danger they do not sense. Pinions, wings with feathers on the ends of the wings. Bone, flexible, strong, resilient. Put in place over the baby birds without the baby birds ever asking for it. Many of us have sung the song, "His eye is on the sparrow." And the words are as follows: "Why should I be discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home? When Jesus is my portion, my constant friend is He. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me." Pinions placed gently around us on our worst days and on our best, to remind us that God is here and blesses us right well, calling us beloved and chosen, and protecting us with a reassurance we cannot find elsewhere. This is refuge. And this refuge becomes a place in the heart of God to which we can go anytime and in any circumstance. Refuge is the place we run for shelter. Refuge is the fortress to which the psalmist referred. Refuge is the long shadow cast by the Lord, which means if you're standing in it, you're close to Him. Refuge exists in spite of the threat. The terror of the night, or the arrow that flies by day, or the pestilence that stalks in darkness, or the destruction that wastes at noonday. He pretty much covers it all there, I think. You know of such trouble. I don't have to line it out for you. You can fill in the blanks. I'm not going to list for you everything that was in the headlines or on television this week that qualifies as bad news. You've seen some of it. You've read about some of it. But have you felt the pinions close around you? How have you felt the pinions? I can't feel them for you. Only you can describe how it means, what it feels like to be under the wings of the Most High. Over you comes the shadow of their presence to protect and shelter you. Such beautiful metaphors can only be interpreted and described by you. You and I must come to understand and appreciate this is a promise from the Lord. And it's beautifully open to our own interpretation. The destruction that wastes at noonday, fill in the blank from your life. The pestilence that stalks in the darkness, fill in the blank from your life. The terror of the night, you fill in the blank. The arrow that flies by day and pierces you to your core, only you know. The life we live takes a lot of faith. We can't walk this journey alone. God continues to send us servant leaders with blessings to save us. The psalmist relays a promise from our God which is so beautiful and has such depth that we can barely take it in. Those who love me, I will deliver. Those who love me, I will deliver. I hear him saying that when we do not believe, we can face certain trials and tragedies, but God will take us by the hand and lead us to the still waters and make us lie down in the green pastures and give us peace. God's deliverance goes beyond our ability of us to fully understand it. The condition is that we simply love him. I will protect those who know my name, and only those who know his name will be able to fully appreciate what he's doing. Others will be under those pinions, but it will be kind of lost on them what's happening. When they call on me, I will answer them. What an incredible promise. Prayers are answered, as I always say, not in just one way, but in 10,000 ways. More ways than we can ask for or imagine, more abundantly than we can even conceive. We trust, and so we pray. And God speaks his answers through his people and through the natural world. Answers are everywhere. Sometimes it's hard to see them with tears in our eyes, with broken hearts, but they're there. Then he says, I will be with them in trouble. I will be with them in trouble. Repeat that to yourself when trouble comes. Repeat that to yourself when trouble comes. I will rescue and honor them. If the first responders of 9/11 will come when you call, how much more will your God be there? When you're drowning in grief and fear or trouble and doubt. And then he says, with long life I will satisfy them and show them my salvation. I don't know what long life is. Long life usually is another week or two beyond the time that we actually live. Maybe it's just life itself of any duration, long life. Finally, God will show us the fullness of his grace, the magnificence of his peace and the beauty of his love and the fullness of his joy. I believe this to be his salvation, opening our eyes that we may see. It makes our lives now and into eternity bearable and worthwhile. This is the assurance of God's protection. And I don't know how better to say it than to say this is true and dependable. I believe it. God will do what God says he will do. We're created by his hand, beloved and holy. God will not leave us nor abandon us. And through his holy presence, we're able to meet any challenge that comes to us. Any challenge. Let us pray. As we walk to you, Lord, receive us. Embrace us. Show us the way. And show us how to take the next step and the next one and the next one. I trust you will. Amen.